Winter Roses, Autumn by Fairytalelovr, Chapter 20. John didn't bother holding back the sigh of relief when Rob put Joffrey on his back, smiling at his brother's little speech. Adam was equally relieved, but then stiffened when Rob turned his back. Never turn your back to an enemy. The trial was over. Rob had won. But Joffrey was a prickly coward bully who had just lost and been humiliated before everyone in the court. His fears were concretized when the loser stood, his armor glinting gold against the sun, and reached inside one of his gauntlets to draw out a dagger. The handle glinted against the sun, just like the armor, displaying the might of Casterly rock. But the blade itself was dark and rippled. Valyrian steel. Strongest metal in the known world, and also the sharpest. Rob's armor would hold against common steel, but... John moved before he could make any conscious decision, his feet leading him across the courtyard to his brother. He heard Adam following, his sword grating against the scabbard as it was pulled out, but he was so intent in getting to Rob that Longclaw remained in its case. John reached his brother just as Joffrey was getting to him, pushing Rob out of the way, and feeling the piercing pain as the dagger instead cut his back and shoulder, the Valyrian steel cutting through his leather jerkin like soft butter. The momentum threw John and Rob into a tumble, rolling across the courtyard, and John's mind swirled with the movement and the pain. Jaime stood up when Rob's dart gave his back, starting his way to Joffrey, to help him to his feet, and hopefully lead him out of the courtyard before he could say anything in his anger and humiliation. Straight to the horse already waiting to get him to Cersei. It seemed like slow motion. Joffrey pulling out the dagger, the one Valyrian steel blade Tywin had managed to get from some poor and hungry disgraced house, had advanced at his foe's retreating form. That's when the world went mad. In the space of a heartbeat, as Joffrey ran to Robb Stark, Jon Starling did the same from the opposite side, and then pushed the northern heir out of the way. And once again Joffrey tumbled at not meeting resistance, tripping over his feet, unused to the weight of the armor he had on, and barreled right into the rack of weapons Uncle Stafford and Littlefinger had thought would be smart to leave there. Jaime's heart failed a few beats as he ran the rest of the way, and his mind froze as he saw the spear poking through Joffrey's back. No! No, no, no! He stepped closer and saw the boy struggling to draw breath. Joff! Uncle! Don't speak! Maester! Jaime yelled, his mind a whirlwind and his heart pulsing painfully in his chest. Hold on, Joff! Where's the Maester? But Joffrey drew a last, struggling breath and relaxed, kept upright only by the spear that pierced him, his green eyes glassing over. Jaime sagged against the rack. Joffrey was dead. His son, his firstborn, dead before his eyes, holding his hand. Dead, calling him uncle. He turned to see the commotion a few paces away. Robb Stark was also yelling for a maester, holding his bleeding brother in his arms. Sense ceased to exist. To Jaime's confused and wounded mind, they had murdered his son. They had to pay. Adam cursed as he saw Jon tackling Robb, as he saw the glint of the dagger cut his back. He skidded to a stop when the brothers finally stopped rolling, and breathed a huge sigh in relief as Jon replied, though his voice was filled with pain. A cut, however deep, was something that was healed. I'm fine, Jon muttered. Robb, we gotta stop the bleeding, Adam said, already reaching for the ruined jerkin. Maester! Robb called, even as he helped Adam set Jon to his front on the ground. We need a maester! Longclaw had loosened from the scabbard, and the Valyrian steel was peeking out as the two men pulled Jon's ruined shirt and bundled it to put pressure on the cut that ran from shoulder to shoulder. But then the knight's senses picked up on the movement, and he barely had time to reach for the sword, his own dropping to the side as he knelt down to help Robb, raising it just in time to block Jaime's attack. Adam cursed. The blonde was obviously beside himself in grief and was acting out, but he needed to contain the threat. Longclaw was too light in his hands, after so long using common steel, and he was able to hold it against the downward attack, even as he reached for his own sword. Once he had it, Jaime took a step back to be able to defend himself against the dual attack, and the two knights parried. While he had never stopped training with two swords, Adam hadn't used a sword so light as Longclaw ever since he had departed Starfall and left Dawn behind, so it was harder to remember that he didn't need to put so much strength behind his parries. "Step back, Lannister!" he warned, pushing Jaime away from Jon and Robb. But Jaime was beyond words at this point and kept attacking mindlessly. Adam cursed mentally. He didn't want to hurt Jaime, especially because he knew there would be repercussions. But he couldn't allow him to get any closer to Jon and Robb either. Sir Barristan came from the audience and joined at Adam's side. "Stop this, Jaime! Right now!" he yelled, and the Lion Knight couldn't fight both of them at once. Finally, stepping back, "Put away your blade and get out of here!" Barristan commanded. Jaime staggered, but marched away from the courtyard, the crowd making way for him. As Adam turned back to return to Jon, Oberyn popped up at his side. "I forgot the dagger," the prince said in a rushed voice. "It turned blue." Adam stiffened. Blue meant poison. Strong poison. "Can you figure it out?" he asked. "Of course. Just a warning," the prince answered and disappeared in the middle of the crowd. "I said I'm fine, Danny," Jon was saying as they joined the group around them. "Just dizzy. The tumble was too sudden." "We need to get you to the tent," Adam said, seeing the gossipers staring at his scarred chest as his shirt was bundled on his back. "He's dizzy for a reason." He exchanged a look with Ned. "Come on!" Adam and Robb hoisted Jon up. He wavered. Stafford Lannister started screaming, "He killed our prince! He killed Joffrey after the trial was over! It's treason!" The crowd was inflamed, and the two sides, Lannister supporters and Stark supporters, began yelling, "It was the fallen line that came to attack Lord Robb behind his back!" Unsurprisingly, Great Jon Umber's voice was the loudest. "Dishonour! Pure dishonour and against the king's decree!" Adam still tried to get Jon to the tent anyway, but the crowd was in the way and didn't make room for them. Jon wavered on his feet even more, and he was looking paler. "He needs to lie down," the knight said to Ned. "Enough of this!" the Lord of Winterfell yelled, his voice booming over the yelling and making the crowd subside. "You can argue to your heart's content, but I'm getting my son to a maester, so make way or I cut our way through!" he exclaimed, his hand threateningly poised over his pommel. "A knight who can't withstand a small cut," Davin Lannister mocked. "I would mind my words if I were you, sir." Arianne also cut into the racket, still standing on the front row of the audience, and therefore above the rest. "My uncle has the dagger Joffrey Lannister used. It was poisoned." The crowd yelled even more. "Lies! Lies and lies and lies! Everyone knows how the Dornish feel about us!" Staffan yelled. "Are you accusing a prince of treason, my lord?" Arianne asked. "Are you accusing Prince Oberyn Martell of lying to the king, and in front of me, his niece, heiress to Sunspear? And more, if I am announcing it, you are accusing me, Princess Arianne Martell, of treason. Will you make your accusation formal, because I am not afraid of answering it?" Stafford immediately backed down. "Quiet, all of you!" Robert yelled, making people turn to him. His face was stony. "The trial by combat spoke for itself. Joffrey of House Lannister was found guilty. After the trial was over, he tried to cowardly attack his opponent, Lord Robb of House Stark, behind his back, and the gods have punished him for this betrayal. Lord Starling pushed his brother out of the way. He didn't even draw a weapon, and the Iron Throne finds him blameless. It was a fair and just fight, and whatever happened afterwards is a disgrace Joffrey brought upon himself. Now let's move this along." The king turned on his heels and stomped out of the courtyard. The crowd parted, and Adam and Rob half carried John to the tent. Sir Barristan gave Longclaw, which he had taken from Adam's hands as the knight went to support John, to Danny, and then rushed after the king he had to protect for the time being. As she took John's scabbard, people started gossiping again, whispering that the blade was Valyrian steel, the White Wolf and Winter Diamond making its ownership obvious. Robert nearly ran all the way back to his chambers and locked himself inside as soon as he could manage. He downed the first flagon of wine so quickly he didn't even take a breath in between gulps. But not even the wine took the edge off his feelings away. He was locked up in his chambers for days, only the servants bringing more wine being allowed in, and, in those moments, the king was oddly stiff and silent, not demonstrating any reactions. From inside the tent, they could still hear the noises of the still divided crowd outside, though Jory, his guards, and the northern lords blocked the passage of any gossips. Adam and Rob helped John to the cot, lying him on his side, his back facing them. Ella reached into her necklace and brought out a small vial pending from her necklace. "What is that?" Ned asked as Adam tipped the vial into John's mouth. "Generic antidote," Ella replied. "It'll buy us time until Oberyn figures out what the poison was." "He said it turned blue," Adam said, standing back up and tugging on his hair as Mr. Byron started tending to the wound. "Fuck!" Ella cursed, starting to pace. "Don't worry, Lady Stark. If anyone can figure out a poison, my uncle can," Arianne said, coming into the tent. "I see you are prepared for emergencies." She nodded towards the empty vial by the bed. "Oberyn has to be a good influence in some aspect," Ella muttered. "You know they'll be coming for you now, right?" "Let them try," the princess said with a shrug. "Uncle Oberyn will love the opportunity. Dorne has been itching for lion meat for too long already." Catelyn only looked from one to the other, confused. She had been curious, when she had come to get Rob earlier, about the relationship between the whore's brother and Prince Oberyn. But as the Dornish prince had a reputation for having all sort of unsavoury friends, she didn't dwell much upon it. The bastard putting himself in danger to help Rob, however, had her conflicted. Why had he done that? Had he thought himself fast enough to get to his half-brother before Joffrey? Had he wanted to be close enough to pull his sword out and rise in defiance of his slain half-brother in cynical grief? "You should have stopped him," Rob said weakly, holding on to Marjorie's hand. "He should have stayed away." Adam snorted. He's even more stubborn than his father and as protective as his mother, he thought. "I couldn't stop him, even if I had the time to," he said out loud. "Don't blame yourself, Rob," Dany said shakily from where she knelt by John's head. "I can still punch you for being stupid," John slurred. "This is all my fault," Sansa sobbed. "If I had stayed in that day, none of this—" "Shh, love, don't be like that," Isla said, the closest to the girl, and pulled her into a hug. "Joffrey's the one who pulled out the dagger. It's no one's fault but his," Benjen said. Still unconvinced, Sansa only hugged her aunt back, tears falling unbidden as they watched the maester work. "The cut is clean, and the bleeding stopped," the maester said after several long moments. "Well, as clean as it can be, when I don't know the poison. I only hesitate to suture it now." "You don't need to," Melisandre said, slipping inside the tent as well. "I'm not dying," John mumbled. "I'm fine." "Fire is what purifies our souls, my lord," Melisandre said. "If you cauterize the wound, it will burn the poison away." "It's already in his blood by now," Adam said. "He is the Lord's chosen one," Melisandre insisted. "If we—" "Got it!" Oberyn interrupted, bursting through the flap, already uncorking the vial. Adam took it hastily. "Go slowly, or he'll throw it back up. Too strong." "What was the poison?" Ella asked. "It seems the Lannisters have a sinister sense of humor," Oberyn said, his face scrunched up in a frown. He had clearly not enjoyed the joke. It's wolfsbane. Ned stiffened. That was no small joke. The mood in the Tower of the Hand was terrible that evening. Maester Byron had put a salve on the wound, and then wrapped it up carefully, saying that as long as the bleeding was kept under control, the cut was too thin to be sutured and would need to heal without stitches. It didn't look so terrible, though it would leave a big scar behind. It took a long time for the crowd to disperse, but finally it did, and they were able to return to the tower. John had wanted to walk back on his own, but the poison had weakened him. So, after stumbling about, he accepted to be carried in a cot. Or, actually, didn't have much strength to rebuff Danny. He fell asleep on the way, barely stirring as Ned, Benjen and Adam put him on the bed on his front, and hadn't yet woken. Lyanna had begun to cry when she saw the guards carrying the cot down the hallway, jumped onto the bed as soon as the men stopped moving, and then hugged John's arm against herself strongly. No one had had the heart to send her back to her own chambers. Danny had checked on little Adam, and, reassured by Isla that she had put him to sleep when the time came, the blonde returned to her husband. Lying on the other side of the bed, Lyanna had immediately reached for her hand as well. Ned had marched down to the training room and locked himself inside, certainly demolishing quite a few training dummies from the noises they could hear from outside. Ella was so anxious. After an anxiety-filled few weeks, she had started having pains. Isla had sent for the maester and helped her get to her chambers, but it was a false alarm. But at least Ella was convinced to stay in bed without much trouble. As Edric was staying for dinner, to support his future family, Alaria slipped inside her sister's chambers and stayed with her, making sure she rested. The afternoon wasted away in a dark shadow, and it was dusk when Sir Barristan came by. Benjen was the one who had to go inside the training room and ask Ned to rein in his fury to deal with the politics. But at that point the man was more tired than angry. "The Silent Sisters have Joffrey. They are preparing the body," the Lord Commander of the King's Guard reported, when he, Ned, Benjen and Adam retired to Ned's solar. "Though the doubt remains as to what will happen afterwards." Ned sighed, hitting his forefinger on the desk. "Robert has already disinherited Joffrey, even after... He called him Joffrey Lannister. I say ask him what he thinks, though I have no doubt he is wasted by now." "Well, with the amount of wine he demanded since he locked himself in his chambers, my lord, I don't think even Lord Tyrion would be standing," Sir Barristan said. "The servant coming out just as I was leaving my post said the king is asleep now, though. Doubtful he will wake before morning." "Aye," Ned said. "Ask Jaime Lannister what he wants done, then." "Are you sure, Ned?" Benjen asked. "Shouldn't we wait for Robert?" "He is likely not to care," Ned said. "And, besides, if he's sleeping off the wine, he won't be able to stand a vigil even if he wants to. Let Jaime do it. He should be the one doing it anyway." "There is the matter of telling Casterly Barristan said. "Aye, there is," Ned exhaled. "I will send for Maester Byron. I'd probably write something very rude if I left it to myself." "How is Lord Starling?" Barristan asked. "Sleeping the poison off," Adam said. "Lady Starling and Lady Lyanna are with him." "Why don't you ask Renly to do it?" Benjen asked. "He is Master of Laws, so part of the small council, and technically speaking, he is Joffrey's legal uncle. It was against your son that Joffrey was fighting. No one will think it absurd." "It's a good idea. I honestly don't want even to communicate with Casterly Rock. Not after the bad joke they wanted to play today." "Bad joke?" Barristan asked. "The poison on his dagger was wolfsbane," Adam said. "Adam, how does one identify wolfsbane?" Ned asked. "It has a bloody strong smell," the knight answered, "but I don't actually know." "Well, I do," Oberon said, coming into the room and meddling before Jory could announce him. I have a useful little revealing potion. 1 drop into any vial, and if it turns black, it's wolfsbane.
And what if the vial is already black?
Benjen asked. Then it isn't wolfsbane. Oberon shrugged. Well, let me start with the things I came to say. First, it is very obvious reason as to why they decided to use wolfsbane.
Very much so,
Ned muttered. Then I must tell you that they have added insult to injury, Oberon said. The most common form of wolfsbane found in Westeros is either white or yellow. Those are less severe, and the onset symptoms are usually nausea and vomiting, taking some time to escalate to breathing and heart racing issues. For anyone who enjoys the use of poisons, that would be best, because it would send the person home with a full sense of security, and by the time the symptoms showed, it would be harder to revert them. However, the most poisonous, and also the one that would have the power to affect Lord Starling in any dangerous way so quickly, has a particular color. Purple. And, I wonder, which house boasts the purple in their sigil?
Ned clenched his jaw and fists, holding back the urge to punch something. Prince Oberon, he said instead, this potion of yours, to reveal the poison. I would be very interested in acquiring it, he said, and Oberon smiled, setting a vial on the desk. How may I repay you for this kindness?
The prince laughed. Well, you are going after the Lannisters. That is payment enough for me. But, in any case, Ariane was telling me that while I was searching for an antidote, Stafford Lannister had quite enough to say.
I can't give you his head for that, Ned said with a smile. But I'm sure to include a petition for damages in our next court session.
Pleasure doing business with you, Lord Stark, Oberon said with a flush, and then vanished from the room.
Jory, Ned called, setting the vial on the desk again. Gather the men. I don't trust the city guard for this, but ask Lady Starling to borrow a few of their guards. And if the Tyrells and Danes want to help, they may. Start with Stafford Lannister, and then any other Lannisters or their supporters you can find in the castle. And check their chambers for wolfsbane. Check even Lord Baelish's establishment. If any is found, arrest the bitch.
The guard nodded, picked up the potion, and left.
That will start a panic in court, Lord Stark, Barristan said. People won't be happy. Good, Ned said coldly. It should show them what happens to those who threaten my family.
After leaving the fateful courtyard, Jaime had gone straight to his chambers in the White Sword Tower and crumbled to the ground, weakened and lost. He stayed, frozen and unmoving, on his bed, curled up against the pain of losing his son. A son he couldn't even claim. It seemed like hours later, when there was a shy knock on the door. He didn't move. He wasn't going to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing him like this.
Uncle?
A small, muffled girl's voice called.
It's me, Uncle.
Myrcella,
he thought, already moving. His face was drenched in tears, though he had to keep every sob inside, refusing to let them out. He hastily cleaned it as best he could before he opened the door.
Hello, Uncle,
she said, though her smile was tight. Did she know yet? Jaime stiffened as he saw Sir Barristan, standing just a few paces behind her.
Princess, run along inside while I speak with your uncle, please,
Sir Barristan said softly. Myrcella smiled and complied, as Jaime opened the door further for her to pass.
Her sceptre said news from the trial hadn't arrived yet, and since the Queen, I thought it the best the news came from someone in the family. Prince Tommen was in a lesson with his maester, but his sceptre has orders to bring him by afterwards. You are off duty for the next few days, and I told them to send word once the Silent Sisters are done preparing the body.
Jaime nodded, clearing the knot in his throat.
Will the king be standing vigil? The king is indisposed. I don't believe he will be available for that.
Jamie nodded, and the other man left. He had turned back inside, closing the door behind him. Marcella had made herself comfortable on his bed. She looked so beautiful, so innocent, sitting there and hugging one of her dolls. Cersei had looked like that too, a long, long, long time ago, when they were children, younger than Marcella was now, before their father returned from the capital for a visit to his seat of power, and filled her head with the dreams of becoming Rhaegar's wife.
Joffrey lost the trial, didn't he?
She asked softly.
What do you know about it, Marcella?
Jamie asked, pulling a chair to sit to face her.
The scepter said Joffrey did something against Lady Sansa, and the king called for a trial. Then Joffrey asked for a trial by combat, but she said the trial wasn't to the death.
Jamie sighed deeply.
It wasn't. But you're right. Joffrey lost the trial.
Is he going to Mother?
Marcella, Joffrey, you see, after the trial was over, he stumbled, lost his balance.
Oh, is he hurt?
He is gone, my sweet girl.
Gone as in... Her little lips trembled. Oh! She threw her doll aside and kneeled on the bed, throwing her little arms around his shoulders.
Jamie exhaled, relaxing into the hug.
I'm so sorry!
He snorted.
I should be the one who was sorry. He was your brother, much closer to you.
He finished in a whisper. He could still hear Joffrey's last word echoing in his mind.
Uncle!
Right now, it sounded like an insult. Marcella relaxed their hug and leaned back, staring at him with smart and bright green eyes.
I know,
she said, and his heart failed a beat.
No what?
He asked. Jamie's voice shook as he asked. She smiled softly.
Father.
I know. Jamie's heart changed to an uneven rhythm.
Oh,
he asked, tears falling down his face.
For how long?
Marcella only smiled and kissed his cheek.
Father, she repeated, you are my father, and I am so happy. I love you, Father.
And hugged him again, fitting her head on his shoulder. Jamie returned her hug strongly, feeling a weight he didn't know he carried lifting.
I love you too, my daughter.
Daenerys made a poor job of hiding her displeasure when she saw who was coming into the room, which only amused the other woman. Obviously. It was now 3 days since the trial by combat, and Jon was finally rid of all the after effects of the poison. Even the slight fever banished. Maester Byron had insisted on no physical exertion, which Isla had strongly enforced, though Jon was now clear to roam around the tower. They had just been told Prince Oberyn had come and would like to visit, and, since he had been the one to provide the antidote, they couldn't turn him away. But Dany didn't like seeing Princess Arianne tagging along.
I owe you my life, your grace. Jon said, House Starling will forever be in your debt.
Anything to stop Lannisters from making another victim, Oberyn said. I am glad you are feeling better, Lord Starling. But my visit today is more due to a desire for strengthening our ties.
Dany and Jon exchanged a look.
How so, your grace?
She asked. Oberyn smirked and turned to his niece.
As you know, Lady Starling, Arianne smiled, our families share blood ties.
Jon stiffened. Dangerous subject. In a tense time in the capital. Not to mention that merely saying as much could be badly interpreted.
I am aware, Yes, Danny acknowledged politely, but your family holds no ties to House Starling, she said pointedly.
Ariane only smirked.
Well, Jean here is the first Lord Starling, is he not? Though, I must say, I wouldn't mind strengthening our ties, she said with a sensual smile.
Danny's face fell, and she felt her blood beginning to boil again. John took her hand and squeezed it, trying to soothe her anger. "What is your point, Princess?" he asked, trying to be as cold and detached as he could.
Well, she continued, highly amused, I propose a marriage alliance, of course. Lord Starling is my husband!
Danny spat through clenched teeth, already imagining tearing the other woman's face off with her nails.
Oh, I am aware, Ariane said, though I personally think the faith is extremely boring. Monogamy is boring. Pleasure lies in diversity. The old Valyrians, the Targaryens, were the ones who were right, practicing polygamy.
Lady Starling and I are married before the old gods, your grace, John said. They believe in monogamy as well.
Ah, then you could take a new wife inside the sept,
the princess exclaimed. Danny stood up in a jump, her ears buzzing and red colouring her vision.
Say that again! Of course, it's not like we need marriage to have fun, Ariane went on. I mean, pleasure is free, is it not?
John held Danny's arm back when she moved, her face flushed with anger.
Enough, Addie,
Oberyn said, seeing that the situation was going badly.
I am very pleased to see that the dragon has claws, my lady, but you would be better served sinking them into a stag or a lion.
The snakes are your friends.
Apologies, Lady Starling,
Ariane said, amused and unrepentant,
her eyes shining. I meant no offence. I would actually want to propose a marriage alliance between our children.
Danny sat back down, still furious, and inclined to say no before thinking on it, just because of who was making the proposal. John, however, after all the long years of learning diplomacy from Maester Lewin and his father, decided to go down the political route. "Forgive me, Princess," he said. "I was unaware you had children, or that you were married, for that matter." A married woman forwardly propositioning a married man, and in front of his own lady wife, no less. It was obviously true, the rumours about how the Dornish viewed their sexuality as something open.
It is a recent match, Ariane said, shrugging. My husband is Sir as Ironwood, and us Dornish still like to live within our own borders. So the ceremony was a small thing in Sunspear. After all, we would never allow the man who sanctioned the murder of my aunt and cousins, or any of his envoys, into our home.
John felt uncomfortable. At the same time that he felt like he should be pleased Oberyn, a man he owed his life to, he hesitated to think of a betrothal this early. He knew he and Danny were an exception, but arranged pairs rarely got along so well. And he knew much of that was due to growing up together and with a shared circumstance. They had both been outsiders in Winterfell, regardless of the love of his siblings. And besides, the way Ariane was speaking, she seemed to be scheming for her house to have a comfortable position in an eventual change of political circumstances. "Your Grace," he said, "your proposal is very generous, and I am certain it would be an honour for our child to be married to a Martell. But they are too young, and as your recent marriage suggested, your child isn't even born yet. I should prefer to wait until the children are grown enough to at least meet and see if they will get along minimally."
Oberyn snorted. I thought you would say that. My uncle has advocated for the beauty of love, Ariane said, though I fail to see what love and marriage have to do with each other.
John squeezed Danny's hand to keep her quiet.
But I accept and understand what you are saying, Lord Starling. Therefore, I slightly modify my proposal. I suggest a pre-betrothal, to be reviewed on the children's 12th name day. If we, at the time, believe the match to remain good, the proper betrothal can take place.
Which child's 12th name day, Princess? John asked. Lord Adam is only 1 name day old. So by the time you have a child.
Ah, you misunderstand me, Lord Starling. I know Lady Lyanna is your heiress. I am proposing what Theron II proposed. A double marriage alliance. Lady Lyanna will marry my son, and Lord Adam my daughter.
My baby girl? John couldn't help but think.
He knew Lyanna would have to marry eventually. But to have even the suggestion presented.
Boys are boring, she said.
She was so little, so innocent. He felt like rushing upstairs and hugging her tightly, then asking Melisandre to find some magic to keep her his little girl forever.
I am sure that you will understand that, however honoured we are,
Dany said when John kept quiet. She knew exactly what her overprotective husband was thinking.
We need time to consider such a proposal. Of course, Lady Starling.
Arianne smiled.
We may have hot blood, but we understand the need for caution.
We would also, Oberyn cut in, make the suggestion that such a deal remain known only between our houses, until a more convenient time, of course. John was uncomfortable with the clear political manoeuvre taking place.
I do agree, that would be best,
Dany said, and John was even more unhappy. But the Martells stood up, and courtesies were exchanged as they left.
It's dangerous, Dany, John said quietly once they were left alone in the room. And you don't like her?
No, I don't. Because I know she is trying to get you to irate me. And it angers me even more that I fell for it. But her proposal has merit.
We don't have the men, Dany. The men or the money. I don't judge you for it, but we simply can't do it.
She clenched her jaw, knowing that he had understood the underlying proposal and her thinking.
That fat fool, she started.
I agree with you. He lowered his voice even more. But we don't have the men. We don't have the money, even with the Dornish. And I won't force my father to choose between family and duty.
He would choose us, she insisted.
I can't force his hand, Dany. I just can't.
We should have the money soon enough. By the children's wedding, at least.
John sighed. Here is not the place for this conversation. There's been enough political upheaval for someone to catch us and pass the gossip along.
John, she called as he turned to leave, if the oaf asks for my head.
He would have to step through me to get it, Dany. I'm offended you're even asking that. But we can't rise and draw the realm into a fucking war again like this. You know that.
I'm only showing you the choice your father was faced with, she said, or rather, how it wouldn't be a choice.
She left the room then, leaving a pensive husband behind. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. So Joffrey's dead finally. And while Jaime's grieving, that bit between him and Marcella was beautiful. And she wasn't poisoned, so he gets to enjoy that for a bit longer than a few seconds, which is nice. Arianne Martell. I'm 50-50 on her. I don't like her proposal, but I find her kind of funny at the same time. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified for whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.